Abdel Fattah Abdel-Rahman is the new head of Sudan's Transitional Military Council, an appointment following the resignation of Awad ibn Auf. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Ebola virus is ravaging. Despite the death of nearly 800 people, the epidemic, according to the World Health Organization, is not an emergency of international concern. These are our top stories. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast. The Festigraph in Senegal dreams of embellishing the popular neighborhoods of the Senegalese capital and opens up a possibility for new vocations. The organizer of this event, whose vision is to make this festival become a world meeting, believes that graffiti in Africa is a committed art, that it raises awareness of issues related to health, politics, and ecology, for instance. The organizer, declared that he also wanted others in other continents to know that in Africa there is graffiti and it is done in the rules of art, an initiative much appreciated by visitors who are passionate about art and expect the best during this week of graffiti. According to Issa Sow, a visitor, he says that he is passionate about art and especially urban cultures, adding that he had come just to see something new, because in graffiti there is always something new. For the French-Spanish graffiti artist Lezat, 29 years old, who participates in this festival, this event is the obvious way to merge various cultures, and says all the graffiti artists are different, but once they get to a different country, they change colors, shapes of letters, the drawings. It is really different. It is just culture. The Graffiti Festival in Dakar, which hosts around 20 graffiti artists, half of whom are Africans, will be punctuated by rap, slam concerts, film screenings, and dance performances, and will end on April 20th with a graffiti night. The upheavals continue in Sudan. After the dismissal of Omar el-Bashir, General Awad, the head of the Transitional Military Council in command of the country's surrounded power, announced in a speech to the nation Friday night that he had resigned from his position, which has fallen into the hands of Abdel Fattah Abdel-Rahman, Inspector General of the Armed Forces and now the new head of the Transitional Military Council. This statement was approved by the population through scenes of jubilation in the Sudanese capital. Early in the day, the Transitional Military Council announced that former President Omar el-Bashir would be sued in Sudan for the crimes he is charged with, and he would not be extradited for war crimes charges. The Military Council also promised to hand power over to a civilian government and that the transitional period would even last only 1 month. General Omar Zain al-Abidin, who heads the political committee of the Military Council, assured that the army did not intend to retain power and that the solution to the current crisis in Sudan would come from protesters. The World Health Organization, the WHO, said on Friday that the Ebola epidemic in the DRC is not an international emergency, despite the fact that it has already killed nearly 800 people since August and the recent rise in number of cases in some regions.
The emergency committee has come to the conclusion that the current outbreak does not constitute a public health emergency of international concern. And I have accepted their advice. In the past, we never saw an Ebola outbreak in a complicated situation like now. We never. We're actually learning from it. Thank you.
There is a concern about funding. The message is funds are now needed to avoid a public health emergency of international concern.
The managing director convened the emergency committee for the second time. In October, World Health Organization experts also concluded that the situation worrying but was not an international emergency. Once again, the committee kept its unanimous position in the face of this epidemic. The African continent is at the heart of all the desires of GAFA, which stands for Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, on the lookout for this huge market. Today, 60% of the 1.2 billion Africans are under 24 years old, and by 2050, the population is expected to reach 2.4 billion people. Google is committed to addressing the social, economic, political, and environmental issues the continent is facing. Tech labs have already opened in the largest city of the Northern Hemisphere, including Tokyo, Zurich, Montreal, or Paris. But the inauguration of one of them recently in Accra represented a small technological revolution in Africa. Thanks to algorithms, voice recognition, or writing, many documents could now be translated into African vernacular languages, which is up to hundreds in number on the continent. Small farmers could also detect problems with their production further upstream or evaluate prices in online markets. But in the face of this aggressive market of GAFA, and as new technologies gain ground, African governments must speed up regulations in this sector and protect personal data. Legislation regulating privacy remains almost non-existent in many countries on the continent, and technological advances are not really under tight control. The fight against African swine fever is a major challenge for the pork sector in Côte d'Ivoire. With the upsurge of the disease since 2014, the rate of pig meat coverage by the national Ivorian production has dropped from 16 to 11% in 2017. Till date, there is no drug or vaccine against African swine fever. To prevent its spread, the only solution is to slaughter the herds in which the virus has been identified and then to incinerate their animals, and the farms must be also disinfected. The virus is transmitted mainly by physical contact. The Ivorian government has just decided to ban the movement of pigs in the infected regions. The marketing and consumption of this meat is also prohibited. Finally, the authorities ordered the slaughter of all pigs in the area. South Africa is also facing the epidemic, with an outbreak of African swine fever reported in a farm in the northwest region. This comes as good news for entrepreneurs in Gabon. From now on, it will be easier for the Gabonese entrepreneurs to carry out an economic and financial business plan. This is made possible through an application created by the new technology incubator, the Cyber School. According to its creator, the application is a real revolution, and it will help future young businessmen and women to set up businesses and reduce the risks of usual failure. For future users, this new technology brings considerable added value to empowerment and entrepreneurship in Gabon. The initiative was well appreciated by Kamendao, the Gabonese Minister of Industry and National Entrepreneurship, who attended the presentation. The main objective of the business plan is to attract potential investors who will decide whether to go further in supporting projects financially. The business plan is a true leap of faith of the business creator. Having a business plan in a digital form is simply a reaffirmation of the reign of the information technology era. The Tupuisan Mazembe is one of the African football clubs which financial base is one of the strongest on the continent. Budget, salaries of players, employee benefits, and others is something that has great impact on the club's results in Africa. With a record of 16 champion titles in DRC, 5 cups and 3 national super cups, as well as 5 Champions League of the African Football Confederation, 2 Confederation Cups, to mention a few. The Tupuisan Mazembe becomes one of the best football clubs on the continent. The club of Lumumbashi is one of the only clubs in Central Africa that are economically viable. And on the sporting side, for the 2018-2019 season, the club is still in contention in the African Champions League and again a contender for the 17th DRC champion title. Before leaving the DRC, Moise Katumbi could raise an annual budget of about 13.4 million euros. But despite its decline in recent years, the budget has never fallen below 8 million euros. According to Solomon Kelonda Della, the financial director of the club and Katumbi's right-hand man, the provisional budget will depend on the performance of Trezon Putu's teammates in the Champions League, because bonuses vary according to achieved results. Abdel Fattah Abdel Rahman is the new head of Sudan's Transitional Military Council, an appointment following the resignation of Awad ibn Auf. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Ebola virus is ravaging. Despite the death of nearly 800 people, the epidemic, according to the World Health Organization, is not an emergency of international concern. That's all for our newscast today. Stay tuned on Gabon 24 for more news.